Okay, first we're going to introduce ourselves on the Pitt Worx team. As I mentioned, if you could hear me, my name is Ainsley Jimenez. I'm working on the HR portion and the benefit portion of Pitt Worx.
My name is Zach Favreau. I'm on the HRS team and also working on the HR module of the Pitt Worx project.
Hi, I'm Jason Kilmeyer from HR.
And I'm Caleb Pingleton, the HR lead for this project on the Deloitte side, working closely with Ainsley, Zach, Nancy, and Jim.
Okay, so first I wanted to go over a few logistics. Most of you have called into the session, so if you have hearing us or a question while we're presenting, you can go ahead and use the chat feature available in the meeting request. So we have a busy agenda. We should take about an hour, maybe a little more, to go through everything this morning. But we're going to talk about the format of the session, some important information you need to know in order to complete the testing in Pitt Worx. We have a bunch of resources available to help you through the testing that will touch on each of those as well. Zach's going to take us through how we're collecting your feedback through this process. Caleb will walk us through a demonstration of the system. Some of you have seen it before, but we just wanted to give you a quick refresher on what it looks like and how to navigate through it. And then we'll close with the next steps that we anticipate over the next few weeks. So first, I will go through the format of today's session. As I mentioned, it should take about an hour, no more than an hour and a half. And the reason this one's working a little differently than others is because we have given you access to the employees within your department administrator. We gave you access to employees within your department. If you're at a responsibility center level, we gave you a higher level access to everyone within your responsibility center. So what we're asking is that you perform the employee actions on your own employees through this session. And we are available in a lab, I think it's 1201 Posvar, until 4 o'clock today. So some of you may want to work at your own pace, at your own desk. It should take about 3 to 4 hours total to go through all the scenarios if you do it at least once on one employee within your area. We're estimating each scenario should take about 10 to 15 minutes each. And there's a total of 19 scenarios, or we call them scripts also, to go through. As throughout today, as I mentioned, we'll be in this computer lab. If you prefer to do your testing within a lab setting where we're available in person to answer questions, feel free to stop by anytime before 4 o'clock. If you are working from your desk, you can log into the same meeting request link at any time during the day, and we'll be monitoring that chat. Caleb and Nancy will be monitoring the chats coming in, so we will respond to your questions promptly. Another difference is we're giving you access to the site through next Friday, February 14th. So that's fine if you can't get everything done today, but definitely pace yourself so you're not trying to get everything in on the last minute. On the 14th, we will shut down your access at the end of that day, and Zach will talk a little bit more about how we're collecting your feedback. All right, next, Zach is going to take us through some important information you need to know as you're going through this testing cycle.
All right, thanks, Ainsley. So before we start testing, I just wanted to cover some important items for you to remember. The data that you will be accessing is in a test site and is from October of 2019. If any employee actions have been processed on your employee population over the last few months, they will be reflected in the data that you see. The resources that we are sharing today are for testing only. This session is not a training on how to use Pitt Worx. Those will be coming at a later date. Because we're using a test site, it can be slow, so please be patient with it. Also, the look and feel of the site is going to be different than what we're going to see when the production goes live. So please keep that in mind as you're going through your testing. As we mentioned, you will have access to your employees within the system, either at your department or RC level. This is in response to your request to have a more real-life experience during your testing sessions. Your username and password and URL were emailed to you individually. If you have not received that, or if you're having trouble getting into the system, please email myself at cavn@pitt.edu. Also, we recommend that using Chrome through this testing, but if you feel strongly about using one of the other browsers, that's totally fine. So in order to complete the actions, you need to find individuals in your area that the actions are applicable to. For example, you can choose location on any type of activity, but you wouldn't choose students since they are all at 50. Please try to make this testing as realistic as possible.
Okay, we're just going to ask real quick, if anybody's calling in on the phone, if you could put yourself on mute so our other callers won't hear any feedback.
I'm going to mute everybody, and then I'm going to ask you if you can hear us still. So can you guys hear us in the chat window? Okay, let's go ahead.
All right, thanks. All right, so please pay close attention to the scenario in each script. The way to process an action such as a job, FTE, or department change will vary depending on whether the employee has a position. We ask that you identify an employee in your area that is in a position so that you can use them for that portion of the testing. In addition, we ask that you please keep your activities limited only to those that are in the scripts that we provided, that you don't go off into any other areas of the environment. We've not set up RC or SO approvals for these actions during this test event. HR, faculty records, and a few others will be approving the requests as you process them. Actions must be approved on a person before another action can be processed for that specific employee. One thing we wanted to note, there will be a system upgrade on February 8th on all of our test sites. We do not anticipate these upgrades that they'll affect your ability to test the system, but if there are any changes that we may need to make to the test scripts so that you can continue testing next week, we'll let you know as soon as possible. Lastly, I just want to say, as noted on your session invitation, this information is confidential, so please do not share any of the data that you're accessing for the purposes of testing. Ainsley?
All right, next we're going to go through some of the resources we built for you for testing. Within your meeting request that you received, there was a link to what's called the data dictionary. So that's the link you will select in order to get to what I'm showing you. All right, so our data dictionary includes a couple different things that may be helpful to you. First, I am going to click on the job type and details tab on the right side. And this is a list of all the different job types that we have at the university. And what we're trying to provide you here is whether or not they're typically assigned a position. As Zach just mentioned, depending on if an employee has a position or not, it will depend on how the action is processed. So for example, an academic, they never have position numbers associated with them. So if you have a scenario that needs to be done on someone without a position, an academic would be a good choice to process that action. And then if I scroll down, sometimes whether or not a person has a position number will depend on their assignment category information. So whether they're part-time, full-time, temporary, or regular. So sometimes I've had to split up the job types into several different groups because they do vary amongst whether they're full-time or part-time, regular, temporary, etc. So another example, if I scroll down, full-time regular staff and part-time regular staff always have positions. So if you come across a script that requires you to use an employee with a position, a staff may be a good example to use in that instance. The other thing this chart will show you is whether or not new hires, rehires, and transfers are processed through Talent Center. So this is not the status as of today. This is going to be the status as of when we go live in 2021. So this just shows that for most job types, any new hires, rehires, and transfers will be processed through Talent Center. So that's why you don't see those as scripts that will be going through during the testing this round. Another resource that is available, on the right side, I'm going to click Action and Action Reasons. There is a lot of different information on here. The first thing is a definition. When you start a script, it's going to ask you what's the action you're taking and what's the action reason. So we have identified what each of those possibilities are, and we've also defined them for you. So if you're not sure which action or action reason to use, you can always look through this list as a reference. We've also included, in this part of the data dictionary, we've defined all of the different termination reasons that are available. This includes both involuntary and voluntary termination reasons. So if I scroll down a little bit, I can see my list of voluntary termination reasons like other employment, personal reasons, retirement. Most of what we see as an action reason listed here is already available to you. It's what you put on the paper employee record today. But these are now drop-down lists available to you in Pitt Worx. The other thing we've defined for you are salary reasons. So if you need to increase or decrease an employee's pay for whatever reason, we've defined what those applicable reasons are in the definition. And I'll try not to make you dizzy as we go through. And something new that we've added based on the last session that we had a couple days ago is we've included additional leave information related to if you put somebody on a leave of absence, there is a section within Pitt Worx that you have to put in a leave type. So again, we've defined all of those reasons that are available to you, whether it's a paid or unpaid status, what action and action reason it would be submitted under, and also the definition of each. So I think, oh, one more. So we've also defined assignment status definitions. So that's what you're used to today on the employee record, like when an employee is on active assignment or terminated or on a paid leave. Those are all listed in this section for your reference. All right. So one more thing on this page two more things. There is a PDF, it's called Working Hours and Full-Time Equivalency. I clicked it on the right side of the page. And what you are used to today is percentage of effort on your employee. So if you're a full-time employee, you are 100% effort. Well, we are replacing percentage of effort with what's called full-time equivalency in Pitt Worx. So looking at this chart here, 100% effort is now equivalent to 1 FTE. That's when an employee is working 37.5 hours or 40 hours per week. This chart will help you define and do the math for you. If you know someone's 95% effort, you know that's 35.625 working hours. So it will just help you in anything related to FTE or full-time equivalency. And then the last thing within our data dictionary, there's a glossary section. And you may already be familiar with this because it was created for Talent Center. We've added a core HR section, just some of the terms that we use within Pitt Worx that might be listed in the script or we might be referring to during our presentation. We've identified some of those things and tried to define them for you as well. So again, I hope that is a useful resource. All right, so I need to find one more thing to show you. It was an attachment within the meeting request. Bear with me 1 second. Did not have it open. But Zach's going to walk us through how we're collecting feedback, and that's being done on the Excel spreadsheet that's in your meeting request attachment.
One thing I want to mention to everybody, Ainsley had mentioned an upgrade that was coming up. So it's happening this weekend, or Zach did, and the system will be down starting from 10 o'clock Friday night until 2 p.m. Saturday afternoon. So if you wanted to try to do something this weekend, there is going to be that window where it will be down, just so you guys know.
I hope nobody was planning on doing it over the weekend. Okay, so I now have up our last resource here that was sent out to you in the meeting request. These are the scripts that you'll be walking through, step-by-step instructions on each of our employee actions. So I'm on the summary tab right now. This is our table of contents that can take you to any of the other request type. So if I click on change location, here's an example of what the script looks like. And each script is a tab at the bottom of the worksheet. So in this example, this is a location change. It will give you step-by-step how to log in, what fields you need to complete. One thing I wanted to point out specifically is there is a field called test script name details. And this is a summary of the type of person that you can use for this particular script. So when we mentioned before, certain scripts only apply to people with positions, certain scripts apply to people without positions. That is where the information will be whether or not the person has a position. So in this location change, it says it can be used for any employee, regardless of whether they have a position or not. So you want to make sure you're looking at those details before you're finding a person within your area that you're going to test this scenario on. So Zach is going to walk us through how we're collecting feedback on this document.
All right. So as you're going through the test scripts, please document if each step passes or fails, using the actual results column to add notes on any action that fails. So just to define what we're looking for as far as an action that fails, that's going to be anything where you're getting an error message or there's anything system related that's preventing you from performing an action. So if you just don't, if that action isn't part of your daily duties or you just don't have any employees in your area that fit that action, just please mark it in the notes section and move past it. Those aren't going to be something that we would define as a failure. It's anything that's system related. If you have notes in the Excel version of the document, please include them in the completed version that you're going to send back to me at the end of the testing. Also, if you take any handwritten notes, we ask you to please transpose them over into the electronic copy before you send that back. It would be helpful to us if at any time you do not receive the actual results that were expected, please take a screenshot of the system and save that into the script, as that's going to be really helpful to us as far as recreating the issue moving forward. As you're working through the processes, please let us know if you have any other information that you feel would be helpful to add to our data dictionary that either we didn't include or edit to anything that we have existing. And that also goes for the test scripts as well. If you're walking through them and you're not navigating to the correct area, or there's any issues that you find, please add those in the notes at the bottom and we'll get those fixed for you. Please return all completed scripts and comments back to myself. Again, my email is zav10@pitt.edu by the end of the day on February 14th. We hope to hold a brief open session after the user acceptance testing to collect any additional feedback about your testing experience. Each of you are selected for this activity based upon the valuable insight to this process that you can provide based upon your position within the university. So we ask that you please be sure that you're completing each test script and documenting your results accordingly. Lastly, if you're having any issues with the system and finding that it's not allowing you to complete an action, please feel free to reach out to us and we'll try to troubleshoot those for you. Okay. So I'm going to hand it over to Caleb, who will walk us through a demonstration.
Thank you, Zach. And just to reiterate, this is all coming from a place of listening to what you guys wanted. This is your real life experience using your data, your security. So we hope that you're going to get a lot of benefit out of what you're going to be seeing in the future. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm basically going to walk you guys through some of the navigational steps within the cloud and give you a couple of tips and tricks along the way. So let me go ahead and share. So just as a quick chat, can everybody see my login screen? If you can just say yes in the chat box. Thank you. So this is what we call the login page, and I'm going to act as if you guys haven't seen this at all, so I want to make sure I'm detailed in my explanations. So every single one of us is going to be coming in from the lens of a department administrator, an RC administrator, or an SO administrator. The only difference that we're going to have is in who we see from a working perspective. So I'm logging in as Pete Sampras. He is a department administrator, and I'm managing the General University Budget Department. So I should only be able to see people within that particular department. So I'm going to click on the sign in button. I get this all the time, so don't be alarmed by it. If you get this when you're going to log in, just either click on the refresh, which up in the browser in the upper left-hand corner, there's this little circle with an arrow. You can click on that and it'll refresh your system. But for me, I have this saved as a favorite, so I'll just click on my favorites and it should bring me back to my login page.
And the URL to get into the system was within an email that I had sent earlier this week. So you should have two emails from Ainsley Jimenez, one with your username, the other one has your password, and I forget which one. One of them has the URL, which should have the word dev2 is our system, our test site that we're using for this particular testing session.
Yep. Thank you, Ainsley. So when you first log in, you're going to come to what we call our home page, our landing page. You're going to be able to see your name, and the cloud is a role-based application. So whatever role we give you is what you're going to have access to and should determine what you see here on the screen. So the area that we're going to work in for our transactions and our guided flows is up here in the top of the screen. You're going to see 4 groupings. You're going to go into My Client Groups, and then you're going to go into Person Management. So Person Management is going to allow you to search on your workforce with the security, preventing you from seeing anybody other than what you should have from a department level or an RC or SO level. So one of the things that I want to mention is you're going to be going in and out of the system. And if you ever find yourself like lost or not sure where I need to be, or if you want to get back to that home page, up in the upper right-hand corner, this is known as our global work area, you're going to see a home icon. And if you click on that home icon, it should take you back to our home page. So that's a good tip for you if you're not sure where you were. Another thing that I want to show you is one of the transactions. So we're going to do a guided flow, and then I'm going to also show you how we're going to do the percent of effort action, where we're actually using a position to reduce the FTE for an employee. So those are the two demonstrations that I'm going to do, but these are certainly the work area that you guys will stay in and work in to complete these transactions. So to do a location change, again, you have in your guided flow a couple ways to go into to do the guided flow itself. I'm going to teach you guys through person management. This is something that you'll want to get used to, get familiar with. The HR team on the ground always tells me that I talk Oracle-ese, so that dictionary that Ainsley showed you around the Oracle terminology will come in very handy as I go through my demo. So you may hear something. If it doesn't sound familiar to you, you can always refer back to that in the dictionary and see what I'm talking about. So when you get to the person management search page, there's a search section that you'll be able to pull up an employee for whom you have access to. So I'm going to, because I work in general university budget, I'm going to do a search off of that department, and it's going to bring up all the employees that I have available to me. You guys should know your population. You can always search by first name, last name. You can search by your person number. There's several ways that you can get to the person you want to do the transaction on. But this is just, I just want to show you how the security and all of this works together from, you know, how do I access and who can I see? What do I have access to and who can I do that for? So I'm selecting general university budget only. So I'm going to click on OK, and I'm going to click on search. So you'll notice it's only going to bring up those people that I have in my department. So I'm doing a location change. A location change we all determined in previous sessions would be something that no one needs to really approve, and it's just going to get automatically approved and committed to the database. So we're going to use Tamara here. And to get to our guided flow, you want to hover over her name. And to the right of it, you're going to see an ellipse that's in orange. So you're going to click on that ellipse. And that's going to bring up Tamara's record. And this is also known as smart navigation. This has already been called out, and we will fix this in our scripts. But what I want to say is when you get to the smart navigation form, if your eye is highlighted, this is information around the employee. The area that you're concerned with and what you'll want to click on is this down arrow here. So we will make a fix to that in our script so that it'll make a comment around how to navigate through this. So once we get to our actions, we're going to go to personal and employment. And by the way, I should have mentioned this. You guys are just watching. You don't need to follow along with me and try to do it. I apologize because I'm going relatively quickly. You're just following along and seeing how the navigation will work. Under personal and employment, the lion's share of our guided flows are around our assignment changes. So we want to find change assignment to the right where our actions are. So when we click on the change assignment, this is going to launch our guided flow. So again, the purpose of the guided flow is to get rid of the ER, to be able to produce a record that you can transact on with only those fields that you need to be able to complete that transaction. So in the first section, the guided flow is a list. So it's going to tell you everything that it's asking for until you can get to the next section. So the first section of when and why says, when does this assignment change start? And that's the effective date of when you want to make that location change. You'll notice that it automatically defaults to today's date, but you do have the ability to either manually key in another date or use the calendar icon to select a date. But I want to preface that date should either be today or a date in the future. We agreed as a team and as policy and procedure, we don't want to use guided flows to do any sort of retro change. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and select today's date. The next thing I want to select is my action name. So I know this is my location change, so I'm going to select change location in the action. And what we've asked is that every action have an action reason. So you'll notice that the why are you changing the assignment is highlighted in red. This is giving me a warning telling me this is a mandatory field and I have to put or enter something into it. So I'm going to go ahead and select change location again. And once I've entered that information, it gives me the green light that I can continue. So I'm going to click on continue and it's going to take me to the next section. So this location change is simply just that. We're not going to allow anyone to change anything other than location for this transaction. I know you're going to see a business unit field on here. This is because of how cloud operates. We have a business unit tied to every legal employer, so we can't make that, we can't hide this field. It has to be there, but we're saying in the script itself, just skip it and leave it as is in the field itself. So what you want to do is go to the location field. Here, there's intelligence search capabilities within it. So I could actually type in, and it's gonna, I could type in a string of letters, and it's gonna bring in a corresponding result from that. So one of the things I want to mention is that when you search and add a new location, try to use one that where the 4 digits at the end aren't all zeros. Try to use one that says 0107. We're currently in the process of putting together what we're going to do if there's a location missing from our list of values. So we're working towards that. So for the time being, we're asking just select a value that's already in the list. So in this case, I'm going to select Craig 0107. I'm going to click on continue because that's the only thing that I need to enter for this location change. And then I get to my submit stage here, and this is going to be true for all guided flows. We've included the ability for you to add comments and attachments when it's applicable. It's not required, but if you're doing something where you have additional documentation that you want to attach to it, you'll be able to do it here. And that's going to be for all of our guided flows. So I don't have anything that I want to say in a comment. I don't have anything I need to attach. So I'm just going to go ahead and submit it. So that's going to allow me to make the change to the individual's location. This one has no approval rule, so it gets automatically committed. It takes a couple of minutes for it to commit to the database. So you'll want to wait a couple of minutes, and then you can go back and actually re-query and look at that employee to see that location change has been committed and is completed. So that's pretty much the easiest transaction that you guys are going to do. And I just wanted to walk you guys through the steps of that. The next one that I want to show you, and I'm trying to let this complete here, so I'm talking and vamping, is around an FTE change. So as mentioned before, anything that requires a new position code, that's going to come from Talent Center. So transfers where I'm going from one position to another position and my code changes, that should all be Talent Center related. The changes that we're talking about here is where the code stays the same. However, I'm going to change something within the position. And this is all done through position management, where the seated incumbent in that position will inherit the changes that I make to the position itself. So this is done in a different section, but still through my client groups. So I'm going to click on the home icon. And I'm going to click on the workforce structures icon in my apps area. So if I click on that, you're going to notice this has been pared down, and all I have access to is managing positions and incumbents with my role. So if I click on manage positions, I'm going to, and you should, in this particular guided flow or in this particular script, find an employee that you have in a position where the position code is not going to change, but something with the FTE, which we're about to do, is. So be sure to have that employee in mind when you get to this script. So you have the same capabilities within the managed position area that you can search off of a specific position. And I have a position that I'm going to make a change to. This is a program coordinator. And if you know the code, you can simply search by the code. If you know the full name, you can search by the full name, or if you know partial, you can still do that wildcard search. I am going to say when you get to this particular script, it's fairly lengthy, but it's because I wanted to include all the fields that are possible for changing within the position. But if it's not applicable, and especially for this particular exercise, you can pass it, but I want to be as comprehensive and as detailed as possible. So don't get overwhelmed by it, is basically what I'm trying to say. So here's the position. I'm going to click on the edit button and I'm going to select update. Again, I want my effective start date for this position change to be today, so I'm going to let it set as today's date. Action reason, I want to certainly select here, and this is going to be an FTE, working hours, and assignment category change. So this is going to tell me what I'm doing to this position. It's going to create the history, and it's going to allow me to report off of it in the future. So this particular incumbent is in a single incumbent position with one FTE, so he's 100% effort. So in this example, we're going to reduce him from 100% effort to 50% effort. So this is only changing the individual's FTE and assignment category. This isn't changing his pay or anything like that. So I know that there's a script that we can go through that can be used in conjunction to this, but we're just worried about making the change to the FTE and position itself. So the one area that we want to look at, because we're going from 1 FTE to 50% effort, or FTE or 0.5 FTE, we're going to change the assignment category, which right now he was full-time regular. The assignment category is what we want to look at, and we're going to select part-time regular for him now. Because he was full-time, I want to go ahead and make sure that my full-time or part-time field matches what the new relationship is going to be. So I'm going to say part-time year. I'm not making any changes to the position itself. What I do want to make a change to is this is no longer an assumed single incumbent of 1 FTE. So I want to change the type because that's what single incumbent means in the cloud. So I'm going to change it to none, and I'm going to change the working hours for this individual. So what the working hours will do is it will calculate my new FTE. So that calculation is working hours divided by standard working hours. So that's where you get the 37.5 divided by 37.5 to get to that 1 FTE. So if I change my working hours to 18.75, the system will calculate that to 0.5, which is what I want. So when I click on the tab button, I'm going to get this warning that says, oh, by the way, you're reducing the hours. I need to reduce the FTE for this position. Is that okay? And I'm going to say yes. Use the calculation you just calculated. So there aren't any other changes that I need to make to this. So I went from full-time regular to part-time regular. I went from 37.5 working hours to 18.75. I made a change to my position because it's no longer a single incumbent. And then what I want to do is I want to review it. So when I click on the review button, which is in the upper right-hand corner, which remains static, by the way, when you go through the pages, you'll notice you can scroll down, but this little black area up at the top will remain static for you. In the past, if you scroll down, you would lose it. And so that's been something Oracle's working on. With the new UI that you're seeing today, there's going to be a lot of functionality that's more streamlined, which is you guys are actually the recipients of all the hard labor that has gone into us complaining about how bad the system has been in the past. So one of the things that I want to mention is that once you get to the review page, you're always going to see a list of all the attributes that were changed and their current values. But when we're talking about position synchronization, this impacted assignment area is critical because you want to be able to see the incumbent that's sitting there because they're the ones that are going to inherit the change to that position. If you don't see that impacted assignment or the incumbent, then that step right there is a fail and you need to let us know. But that tells us that the system is seeing that the incumbent, this is the seated incumbent, and they will inherit the change. So one of the things that I want to mention, and this is a really good example, so if I can get this, you notice that you have a save button, and I have like preached this time and time again. The only time you ever want to click on save, especially when you have save and submit together, is if you can't submit because you have to go do something else and you're not going to get back to the page before it times out. So my rule of thumb is between save and submit, always submit. So you're going to click on the submit button. I see my incumbent there. And I'm going to get this warning message. I'm going to say yes to, and then it's going to give me a confirmation. And I'm going to click on OK. And what happens in the background, guys, is that on the assignment page, there will be a history or a new record inserted with a date stamp that says position synchronization, and the changes that were made to the incumbent will actually be inherited on the assignment page. So that's the two things that I wanted to show you, as well as some navigational tips around the cloud. And so with that being said, I'm going to hand it back to Ainsley and Zach. Do I need to make a presenter again?
Before we move on, maybe Caleb can open up the phone lines, and if there's any questions so far, you want to submit them in the chat section, or give us a minute and we'll get the phone line open as well. So a question just came in about retroactive changes being available once we go live. Caleb mentioned that for testing, we want you to use current date or future date for your transactions. So it's best business practice not to make retroactive changes. So as much as possible, we want to avoid manual checks and doing pay adjustments on people. So that's why we're saying we want it to be current and in the future. And we hope to apply that same concept once we go live as well, just best business practice. We understand things happen sometimes, and we'll be able to handle those situations as well. But like I said, I think we just want to keep it current in the future. Okay, so the phone lines are open. There's another chat that came in. Should we use a different person for each scenario? Yes, should use a different person for each scenario. We are behind the scenes working on approving requests. You can't submit a second request on a person until the first one on all the way through the approval process. So just to be more efficient on your side, it would be best to choose different people for each transaction.
Go to share, try share.
Okay, there are more questions coming in, so I'm gonna need
I'll
Jason
filter.
or Nancy
I
to
will.
start monitoring those. We'll let Zach finish out what he needs to, and then we'll address the rest of the questions.
So, you want me to ask this question? Which one are you? Ainsley? Ainsley?
How about you let Zach finish out his slide, and then we'll answer the rest of the questions.
Perfect. Okay, co-host. I'll stop.
Bear with us while we get our last slide up. Okay, I don't think we need to have that. Zach
Yeah,
can talk about it.
All right, we'll just get started here. So as noted, you'll have access to the system through Friday, February 14th. We ask that you please return all feedback to me. For the last time, my email is zav10@pitt.edu. So if you can return all your testing scripts and notes back to me by the end of business next Friday, the 14th, we'd appreciate that. So right now, we just want to take a few minutes and have everybody try to log into the system before we wrap up. If you're having issues logging in or even during your testing, please just log into the meeting, send in a chat, log back onto the call. We'll be here. So can we have everybody try and do that right now?
We're stopping.
Yeah, we're gonna stop the recording now, but we'll continue with the meeting to answer any questions.